For 365 days, Leah Harding woke up to the same nightmare. Her daughter's room, untouched. Her laughter, gone. Everyone told her to move on. But then, her phone buzzed. An AirTag alert she hadn't seen since the day her little girl vanished. The signal was close. Too close. Right beneath her feet. A secret compartment hidden beneath the family's floorboards. And the truth that rewrote the entire case. The house was empty, stripped of everything that once made it a home. Afternoon light poured through bare windows, slicing across the hardwood floors in unforgiving rectangles. Dust floated in the beams like suspended ghosts, and the air smelled faintly of bleach, that harsh chemical scent that tried too hard to erase what memory refused to forget. Leah Harding stood in the center of the room, unmoving. It had been exactly 1 year since her daughter disappeared. Every creak of the floorboards carried an echo of laughter that no longer existed. She could still see the shadows of picture frames on the walls where sunlight hadn't touched in months, faint outlines of a life that had been meticulously scrubbed away. The realtor downstairs kept talking, her voice cheerful, professional, oblivious. Leah didn't hear a word. The papers were being signed. In less than an hour, the house would belong to strangers. And she would be untethered, free, they said. But freedom wasn't what it felt like. Felt like exile. The sound of pen on paper drifted up from the kitchen. Then came laughter. Polite, meaningless laughter that twisted something in Leah's chest. Her fingers brushed the wall beside her. The paint was cool and smooth. She remembered painting this room with Ryan. They'd fought over the color. He wanted ivory, she wanted white. But by the end of that weekend, they'd both been covered in paint and laughter. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed. A year, 12 months of police interviews, vigils, online forums filled with strangers pretending to care. Her daughter, Anukika, had vanished after a crash that made no sense. The father, Ryan, survived with no memory of what happened. And the case froze like ice. Leah's life became mechanical. Wake, breathe, survive. The only thing that kept her tethered to reality was this house, the place where everything had begun and ended. Now even that was being taken. She forced herself into motion, one last walkthrough before signing her own surrender. The rooms looked smaller, without furniture, like a body without skin. She walked down the hallway, each footstep hollow, until she reached the master bedroom. Afternoon sun spilled across the floorboards. The light was beautiful, almost cruel. The closet door stood ajar, the same closet Ryan had renovated himself, building custom shelves and a secret safe compartment. She stepped closer. The smell of bleach was stronger here, sharp enough to sting her eyes. Whoever cleaned had used too much, or maybe it just clung to the place like guilt. Her phone buzzed in her back pocket. For a moment she thought it was Brenda, the realtor, calling her downstairs. But when she glanced at the screen, she froze. It wasn't a call. It was a notification. A white bubble on a gray background. Find my alert. Anukika's backpack detected nearby. Leah stopped breathing. Couldn't be real. That AirTag had been dead for months. The police had searched for its signal right after the crash. Nothing. Her fingers trembled as she opened the app. The familiar interface bloomed on the screen. A green dot pulsing softly. Connecting. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then it appeared. The arrow pointed forward. Distance. 20 feet ahead. Leah looked up. 20 feet ahead was the closet. Her heart began to pound, loud enough to drown out the world. She moved toward it slowly, as if afraid to scare the signal away. Inside, the air was cooler, stiller. Her breath echoed. The green arrow rotated again. 12 feet ahead. Then 9. Then the arrow tilted down. Leah looked at the floor. The closet floor was smooth oak, polished years ago by Ryan himself. The signal stayed locked, unwavering. 9 feet below. She knelt, her palms pressed flat against the wood. The floor was cold, unnaturally so. She searched for seams, tiny cracks, anything that hinted at an opening. Her fingers brushed over a faint line in the corner. A memory flickered. Ryan bragging once about building a hidden safe space. She'd laughed it off. She wasn't laughing now. Leah. Brenda's voice called from downstairs. They're ready for you. Leah didn't answer. Her pulse was hammering too loudly. She pressed her nails into the seam, tried to lift, but the boards held fast. Another vibration buzzed through her phone. The signal flashed stronger. Here. It wasn't just beneath the closet. It was directly under her knees. Panic flooded her veins. Panic and hope and disbelief, all tangled together. If she walked away now, the buyers would own this house, and whatever was under here would belong to them. She stood abruptly, stumbled down the hallway, down the stairs, past Brenda's startled face. Leah, are you all right? I forgot something. Her voice didn't sound like hers. In the garage, among the cleaning supplies and forgotten tools, she found a rusted crowbar leaning against the wall. She grabbed it without thinking and ran. The sound of her footsteps thundered up the stairs. Back in the closet, she dropped to her knees again and wedged the bar into the seam. Metal groaned. Wood splintered. She pulled harder. A crack split the silence. Dust rose like smoke. The floor gave way, a section of planks swinging upward on hidden hinges. Beneath was darkness, a narrow crawl space maybe 2 feet deep. Leah's breath came in shallow bursts. She switched on her phone flashlight and aimed it into the opening. Dust motes swirled in the beam. Pipes, concrete, spiderwebs, and then color. A patch of black fabric with tiny pink hearts. She froze. It was a backpack. Her backpack. The one she'd clipped the AirTag to a year ago. Her hand shook violently as she reached in. The rough wood scraped her arm, but she didn't stop until her fingers closed around the canvas. It was real, tangible, warm from her touch. She pulled it out and pressed it against her chest. The zipper creaked. Inside, she found an empty lunchbox, a crumpled drawing of a butterfly, and the faint smell of her daughter's bubblegum shampoo. For a long time, Leah couldn't move. The world around her tilted, blurred. When sound returned, it came as a single thought. Ryan was here. Her flashlight swept the crawl space again. Something metallic glinted behind the insulation. She reached back in, fingers straining, until she touched cold metal. A box. Gray. Heavy. The kind her ex-husband used for cash. The latch was open. Inside, nothing. Leah's mind raced. Ryan's emergency fund had always been hidden somewhere safe. Away from her. Away from the IRS. Away from the divorce lawyers. If this was his box and the backpack was here, he'd stopped at the house that day. He'd taken the money. And then he'd driven away. She sat back on the floor, shaking. Downstairs, footsteps approached. Leah. Brenda again. They're waiting. What's going on up here? Leah didn't answer right away. She stared into the hole, into the darkness that had swallowed her daughter's trail for an entire year. Then she spoke, softly, but with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. The sale's off. 45 minutes later, police cars lined the driveway. Detective Merrick, same tired eyes, same worn leather notebook, stood in the bedroom doorway watching the forensic team photograph the crawl space. Leah sat on the stairs clutching the backpack like a relic. Merrick approached quietly. You did the right thing calling us. She didn't answer. He crouched beside her, glancing at the backpack. We'll run DNA, check for fibers, see if... She was wearing it, Leah interrupted, when he picked her up from school. I saw it on the footage. Merrick hesitated. Ryan. She nodded. He exhaled slowly, then looked toward the closet. If the backpack's here, he came back to the house. But that doesn't mean... It means he lied. Her voice broke on the last word. That night, Leah couldn't sleep. The house was sealed off, the police gone, the echo of camera flashes still flickering behind her eyes. She sat in her car outside the long-term care facility where Ryan had been staying since the crash. Snow drifted across the windshield in soft, indifferent flakes. Inside, sterile lights burned through the windows. He was in there, fragile, harmless, they said. Leah's hand tightened on the steering wheel. All she could see was the backpack. The AirTag had survived a year in silence. It hadn't pinged once. Until she came home. She opened the car door and stepped into the cold. By morning, the house no longer belonged to Leah. Not legally, not spiritually, yet it was crawling with uniforms. Denver PD vehicles idled in the driveway, their headlights throwing pale cones through the drifting fog. Yellow tape fluttered across the porch railings. The same porch where Anukika had once stood in her pajamas, waiting for the school bus and waving at the neighbors. Detective Merrick stood at the threshold, notebook open, eyes half-lidded from fatigue. He'd worked this case before, last year, when everyone still believed in the clean logic of accidents. Now, a year later, he looked older. The winter had deepened his wrinkles. The case had thinned his patience. Same structure, he murmured to the forensics chief. Preserve the floor section, full photo log. No power tools till I say. His voice carried the flat calm of someone who had seen too much, who trusted evidence more than emotion. Leah watched from the stairs. The backpack rested on the landing beside her, sealed in a clear bag. She kept staring at it, as if her eyes alone could will it to speak. Merrick joined her. We'll take the flooring panel to the lab. You said your husband built it himself. She nodded. He liked control. He liked hiding things. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she covered it with a cough. Any chance anyone else had access to the house since he moved out? No one. Not after the divorce. I changed the locks myself. Merrick scribbled a note, then glanced around the hollow living room. Funny thing about empty houses, he said quietly. They hold noise differently. Every lie echoes. The evidence team packed up at noon. The rumble of their van faded down the street, leaving a vacuum of quiet. Leah stayed behind while Merrick finished paperwork in the kitchen. The echo of each pen stroke felt louder than her own heartbeat. Through the window, she could see the for sale sign leaning sideways in the melting snow. The buyers had withdrawn the offer. She didn't care. Let the house rot. When Merrick closed his notebook, Leah spoke first. Detective, you said you believed it was an accident. Do you still? He hesitated. Belief isn't my job, Mrs. Harding. Proof is. But this, he gestured toward the stairwell. This changes the sequence. He stopped here. The question is why. Money, she said. It was always money. Merrick's gaze sharpened. The lockbox. Empty. He kept cash there. Thousands. He wrote again, slow, deliberate strokes. That gives us motive for the detour, but not for a disappearance. Leah's reply came out a whisper. Unless he needed both. Merrick looked up. Both. The money and time to make her vanish. For a long moment, neither spoke. The house popped and settled as the afternoon sun warmed its bones. By dusk, Merrick's sedan rolled down the drive with Leah in the passenger seat. She hadn't planned to go anywhere, but when he said, "Come with me to the precinct," she didn't argue. She needed motion, the illusion of progress. The Denver PD building loomed gray and windowless, a concrete fortress. Inside, fluorescent light replaced daylight. Everything smelled of paper and coffee. A new detective joined them, Angela Voss, younger, brisk, the kind who'd never learned to hide curiosity behind empathy. She slid the old case file across the table. Mrs. Harding will need to revisit your statement from last year. Memory changes details. I remember everything, Leah said. Voss raised an eyebrow. Then let's start with the day of the crash. Leah told it again. The pickup from kindergarten, the 3:15 p.m. footage, the crash report at 6:05 p.m., the endless gap in between. Her words came out like breath through cracked glass. Fragile, deliberate, each one carrying a year of repetition. When she finished, Merrick leaned back, folding his arms. Your husband's amnesia still stands medically. The rehab reports back it up. But if we can prove he stopped at the house, it undermines his statement. Voss tapped her pen. We'll re-examine the GPS data from his SUV. Maybe we missed a ping. Leah looked between them. And if the data's gone? Then we look at what's left, Merrick said. Sometimes the truth survives where we least expect it. It was full dark when Merrick dropped her home. Home. Not the old house, but a small rental across town. Beige carpet, empty walls. She didn't turn on the lights. She just stood by the window, staring at the snow, the reflection of her own face superimposed over the city. The backpack sat on the counter in its evidence bag, waiting to be processed in the morning. She wanted to hold it again, to feel its weight, to smell her daughter's scent still faint beneath the dust. Instead, she poured a glass of water and sat at the table. A message notification blinked on her phone. From Mountain View Rehabilitation, the facility where Ryan lived. The subject line read, "Routine medical update Harding. Ryan." She didn't open it. She didn't need to read about his broken leg, his headaches, his therapy schedule. She needed to see his eyes when she said the word backpack. A knock startled her. 3 sharp raps. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, Merrick was on the porch, collar up against the cold. "I thought you left," she said. "I did." He held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside lay the AirTag, its silver shell dulled with age. "Lab wants your confirmation that this is the same device you clipped to her backpack." Leah took it, the chill of the metal seeping through the plastic. "Yes, I bought it myself. Set it up on my phone." Merrick studied her face. "Then we need access to your Find My account. See if the logs show anything from the day of the crash. The cloud keeps backups." She nodded automatically, though her throat felt tight. Merrick hesitated before leaving. "Leah, if this leads where I think it might, you should prepare yourself. Whatever's under that floor, it's not just evidence. It's intent." When he walked away, the porch light caught the snowfall in silver streaks. Leah stood there long after he was gone, the AirTag cold in her palm, its silence heavier than sound. The clock on the microwave read 12:43 a.m. Leah hadn't moved since Merrick left. The cup of water had gone lukewarm. Condensation traced a ring on the table. Outside, snow kept falling, silent, relentless. She turned the AirTag over in her hand, the small silver circle catching light from the street lamp. A simple device, meant for keys or luggage, not for hope. If it had come alive again, it had to have a heartbeat somewhere in her cloud account. She opened her laptop. The screen's glow bleached her face, carved deep shadows under her eyes. She signed in to Find My device. A map of Denver flickered to life, green dots, gray zones, years of cached data. At first, the timeline was blank after the date of the crash. Then she saw it. A faint gray marker, hidden under a folder called Archived Pings. Her finger hesitated before she clicked. The map jumped. A blue route appeared, jagged and incomplete, like a broken vein running across the suburbs. The last registered location before the signal died was not the crash site. It was their old house, timestamped 5:06 p.m., almost an hour after he should have reached the mountains. Leah leaned closer, her pulse spiking. The app reconstructed GPS breadcrumbs. 3:18 p.m., leaving the kindergarten. 3:45 p.m., downtown traffic camera capture. 4:10 p.m. arrival in their neighborhood. 5:06 p.m. stationary at home. Then blank space until the crash. The first lie wasn't the amnesia. It was geography. She printed the data before her shaking hands could cancel it by mistake. The printer's low hum filled the apartment, a mechanical heartbeat. When the paper slid out, warm and real, she stared at the black ink coordinates like they were scripture. There it was, proof that Ryan had returned home. Proof that the system had failed to see it. A quiet rage began to build behind her ribs. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Leah hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, soft, uncertain. "Mrs. Harding? This is Nina from Mountain View Rehab. Sorry to call this late, but your husband woke up agitated tonight. He kept asking for a backpack." Leah froze. "He said that?" "Yes," he said. "Tell Leah I left it where the money was." "Does that mean anything?" Her breath caught in her throat. "Yes," she whispered. "It means everything." Nina hesitated. "He's calm now. I thought you should know." When the call ended, Leah replayed the sentence in her mind like a curse. Where the money was. It was confirmation, not coincidence. The backpack, the lockbox, he remembered all of it. She opened her old voicemail folder, the ones she hadn't been able to delete. Ryan's voice, cheerful, ordinary. Messages about grocery lists, work delays, birthday reminders. Each one a fossil of a life that never truly existed. Then she noticed one labeled June 3rd, unknown source. She didn't remember recording that. She pressed play. Static. A breath. Then Ryan's voice, lower, slurred. Leah, if you get this, don't sell the house. Please. They'll come for it. The recording ended abruptly. Leah stared at the screen. The timestamp was the night before the crash. Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. The voicemail had been archived, mistagged, hidden in the cloud until now. No one had ever heard it. Not the police, not even her. The crash wasn't an accident. It was an escape. 2 hours later, the world outside had gone silent again, snow burying the city in white. Leah sat at the table surrounded by printouts and screenshots, the AirTag blinking faintly beside her laptop like a pulse under skin. A sudden knock shattered the quiet. 3 sharp raps just like before. Her body went rigid. She hadn't called anyone. Another knock. Mrs. Harding? It was Merrick's voice, muffled through the door. Leah exhaled shakily and opened it. He stepped inside, snow dusting his coat. Couldn't sleep, he said simply. The lab sent me preliminary results. You were right, the lockbox has fingerprints. 2 sets, yours and Ryan's. No one else. She handed him the printed route map without speaking. He studied it, brow furrowing deeper with every line. This isn't in our file, he said. No one pulled these backups. You have it now. Merrick nodded slowly. I'll verify the server logs in the morning. If this holds up, the timeline collapses. Leah's eyes were bloodshot, unblinking. He remembered the backpack tonight. He told a nurse. Merrick's pen paused halfway through a note. Then we talk to him tomorrow. Leah's reply was a whisper edged with steel. No, tonight. Snow kept falling as Merrick's unmarked sedan cut through the empty Denver streets. Streetlights blurred into streaks against the windshield, and the wipers ticked like a metronome, marking the rhythm of Leah's pulse. Neither of them spoke. Mountain View Rehabilitation sat on a low ridge east of the city. Glass, concrete, and too much light. At night, it looked less like a hospital than a border station between guilt and forgiveness. Inside, the air was antiseptic and humming with machines. A night nurse met them at the desk, surprised but compliant when Merrick flashed his badge. Mr. Harding's awake again, she said. He's been restless all night. Leah followed the detective down the hall. The corridor smelled of wax and sleep. A television murmured somewhere, a late-night documentary about ocean tides. When they reached room 214, Merrick motioned for her to stay back a moment. Let me lead, he whispered. We need clarity, not confession through rage. Leah nodded, though every muscle in her wanted to run ahead and shake the truth out of Ryan herself. Ryan sat near the window, a blanket across his knees, eyes reflecting the hallway light like polished glass. When he saw them, confusion crossed his face. Too quick, too rehearsed. Merrick, he said softly, as if greeting an old ghost. I already told you everything. Maybe you forgot something, the detective replied, pulling up a chair. We found the backpack. Ryan's fingers tightened on the blanket. Backpack. The one your daughter wore when you picked her up from kindergarten. A flicker of panic darted through his expression before he lowered his gaze. I don't remember, he murmured. Leah stepped forward, unable to stay silent. Stop lying, Ryan. The AirTag pinged from under our floor. You put it there. He flinched but still kept his voice even. Leah, I told you, my memory. You remembered the backpack tonight, Merrick interrupted. You told the nurse to warn Leah not to sell the house. Why? Ryan's eyes darted toward the window, the reflection of snow falling behind him. His lips parted, then pressed shut again. Leah took another step, her voice barely above a whisper. They'll come for it, that's what you said. Who are they? Silence stretched. The ticking of the wall clock grew unbearable. Finally, Ryan whispered, It's not safe. Merrick leaned forward. What isn't safe? The money, he said. It wasn't mine. I thought if I hid it, they'd let her go. Leah's breath caught. Who, Ryan? Who had her? He looked up slowly, tears glazing his eyes. I don't know their names. I just know they wanted repayment. And when I couldn't, the heart monitor beep spiked. The nurse hurried in, but Ryan lifted a trembling hand to stop her. I need to finish. Merrick signaled for her to wait. Ryan's voice dropped to a rasp. They took her to make sure I'd pay. I went back to the house for the cash, but it wasn't enough. I thought the crash would make them believe I was dead. Leah felt the room tilt. The snow beyond the window blurred into white noise. Where is she now? She demanded. I don't know, he whispered. They moved her. I never saw her again. Then his eyes rolled back. The monitor screamed. Nurses flooded the room. Merrick grabbed Leah's arm, pulling her out into the corridor as the medical team swarmed. The door slammed shut behind them. Leah stood shaking, her nails digging into her palms. He's lying, she gasped. He has to be lying. Merrick's face was pale. Maybe not about everything. The part about debt. That fits what you told me. Leah pressed her back against the cold wall. So what now? Now, he said quietly, we find the people who were owed. A doctor stepped out moments later. He's stable, she said, but you'll have to wait until morning to speak again. Sedatives. Leah barely heard her. All she could think of was the word they. An hour later, Merrick drove her home. He left her with instructions. Sleep, stay available, but she knew she wouldn't. As soon as his taillights disappeared, she opened her laptop again. Ryan's old email still sat in her archived contacts. She guessed at the password he used for everything, Denver 2020, and on the third try it opened. Inside were hundreds of unread messages. Gambling promotions, debt reminders, threats disguised as invoices. But one address repeated Genco Asset Recovery. She clicked the newest one. Mr. Harding, failure to deliver the remainder will result in collection through alternate assets. You were warned. Dated 2 days before the crash. Below a second line, asset designated as 02 will be secured until payment confirmed. 02. Her stomach turned. Anukika's initials. H. 2 letters. 02. She stared until the screen blurred, until her tears fell onto the keyboard. By morning, the storm had cleared, leaving Denver washed in pale blue light. Leah hadn't slept. She sat at the table surrounded by coffee cups, the laptop screen still open to the email. Asset A02 will be secured until payment confirmed. The words burned in her vision. She searched the name Genco Asset Recovery. The results were thin, no website, no address, just fragments in old court filings. Debt collection complaints, shell companies dissolved and reborn under new owners. One filing listed a Denver P.O. box and a contact number. Her fingers hovered above the keys. Calling could expose her, but silence had cost her a year already. She dialed. 3 rings. A click. Genco Holdings. A man's voice said, flat, mechanical. I'm looking for information about a payment from Ryan Harding, she said, forcing calm. Pause. Paper rustled. Who's calling? His wife. Widow. The man corrected automatically. Our records list him as deceased. Leah's throat tightened. He's alive. Another pause. The tone shifted, interest replacing boredom. Then the account isn't closed. Outstanding balance 113,000. You calling to settle? No, she said. I'm calling about my daughter. The line went dead. She redialed. Busy signal. An hour later she was at the precinct. The printout clutched in her hand. Merrick met her in the hallway, tie crooked, coffee in hand. You look like you didn't sleep, he said. I didn't. I found Genco Asset Recovery. They're real, sort of. She pushed the papers toward him. They called my daughter an asset. He skimmed the page, jaw tightening. You called them? I had to. That was reckless, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. If they're connected to organized lenders, you just told them you're alive and looking. Good, Leah said. Maybe they'll start running. Merrick studied her. For a moment his mask of professionalism cracked, revealing something almost like pity. "You think this is still about a debt? I think it's about what that debt bought." He signaled for her to follow him to the evidence room. On a corkboard, pinned between photos of the crash site, was a new item. A blurred frame from a traffic camera dated an hour before the wreck. Ryan's SUV stopped at a red light. In the passenger seat, a small shape, child-sized. "She was alive at 5 p.m., Merrick said. "If they took her, they did it after." Leah felt cold spread through her. "Then we're already behind." Merrick agreed to check the lead quietly. That afternoon they drove to the industrial outskirts of Denver, where warehouses leaned against the sky like tired giants. The P.O. box from the filing belonged to a building that smelled of metal and solvent. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered over rows of mail slots. The clerk looked up, bored. Merrick flashed his badge. "Box number 812. Who rents it?" The man shrugged. "Corporate client. Paid in cash, 6-month cycle. Mail forwarded every Friday to a courier drop on South Federal Boulevard." "When's the next pickup?" "Tomorrow morning." Merrick thanked him and turned to leave, but Leah lingered. She scanned the wall of boxes until she saw number 812. The lock was brass, edges scratched. On impulse she bent slightly. Something small gleamed in the crack beneath it. Paper torn from an envelope. She fished it out before Merrick noticed. In the car she unfolded it. It was half a business card. The surviving print read, E. Ramos, Collections Coordinator. On the back, a Denver address. That night Leah drove there alone. She told herself she just wanted to see the building before Merrick filed the warrant. The truth was simpler. She couldn't wait. The address led to a storage compound near the freight rail. The gate was half open. A sign read Ramos Logistics. A light glowed inside one of the units. She parked, heart hammering, and slipped through the gap. The unit smelled of oil and dust. Filing cabinets lined the walls. On a desk sat a computer and a stack of folders labeled by initials. A01, A02, A03. Her fingers trembled as she opened the one marked as 02. Inside were photocopied documents. Ryan's loan agreements, her marriage license, even Enukika's birth certificate. Stapled to the top was a photograph, blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. A child sitting on a cot in a dim room, eyes wide, clutching a stuffed toy. The timestamp read September 4th, 2022, 3 months after the crash. Leah's breath left her in a ragged sob. From outside came the faint slam of a car door. Voices. Mail. She snapped the folder shut, slid it under her coat, and slipped out the rear exit. The cold air hit her lungs like ice. In the distance, headlights turned into the lot. She ran. Back in her car, hands shaking, she locked the doors and called Merrick. He answered on the first ring. "Leah, where are you?" "I found them," she gasped. "A warehouse, Ramos Logistics on Pine Street. I have the file. There's a photo of her, alive." "Stay put," he ordered. "Don't move. I'm sending units." But the line clicked, static. Then silence. Her signal dropped. Leah stared at the dark road ahead, the folder heavy in her lap. A photo existed. That meant evidence existed. That meant Enukika was alive. Or had been. She turned the ignition. If Merrick couldn't reach her, she'd bring the proof to him herself. The headlights carved a tunnel through the snow-dusted dark. Behind her, in the rearview mirror, another pair of lights appeared. They matched her speed. The dark stretch of highway blurred under the beams of Leah's headlights. Snow whipped across the windshield like static. The folder lay open on the passenger seat, the photo half visible. Enukika's face, grainy but alive. Behind her, the second car held its distance. Too close to be coincidence. She pressed harder on the accelerator. The needle crept past 60. The other car matched her speed. A sign flashed, Exit 9. Downtown/police headquarters 1 mile. She took it without signaling. Tires hissed on wet pavement. The pursuing lights slowed, then vanished into the fog. Only when she reached the precinct gate did she breathe again. She parked crookedly, engine still running, and clutched the folder to her chest as if it might evaporate. Inside, the night officer at the desk recognized her immediately. "Mrs. Harding?" Detective Merrick said if you came in. "Where is he?" She cut in. "In the lab, basement level." She didn't wait for an escort. The stairwell smelled of bleach and tired metal. Merrick was hunched over a table of evidence bags when she burst through the door. He turned, startled, as she dropped the folder in front of him. "Ramos Logistics," she said breathlessly. "I found this before they saw me." He scanned the first page, loan contracts, birth certificates, then froze at the photograph. "Where did you get this?" "I told you, that warehouse. They called her an asset." Merrick exhaled slowly, fighting the instinct to react. "All right, you did good bringing it here. We'll process it properly now." But Leah could see the war in his face, excitement versus caution. "She's alive, Merrick. That's proof." "Maybe," he said softly. "Or maybe it's leverage. We don't know how old that picture is. It's dated 3 months after the crash." He looked up sharply. "Then this isn't a missing persons case anymore." He called to the duty sergeant, ordering an immediate task force for Ramos Logistics. Within minutes, officers filled the hallway, some pulling on vests, others checking weapons. The stillness of the station fractured into movement. Merrick turned back to Leah. "You're staying here. I can't have civilians at the site." Leah's voice was quiet but unyielding. "If they find her, I'm there. Leah, she's my daughter. You can't keep me away from her twice." He didn't argue further. The determination in her eyes mirrored his own fatigue. By dawn, the convoy reached the warehouse compound. Sunlight crept over the rooftops, turning the snow into molten silver. Officers surrounded the building while a SWAT team breached the front gate. Inside, rooms yawned empty, metal desks toppled chairs, faint impressions where files had rested. A fan spun lazily in the corner, stirring the dust. "They cleared out," one officer called. Merrick swept his flashlight across the floor. Footprints trailed toward the back exit fresh. A paper cup lay crushed near the door. Steam still rose from it. Whoever had been here was minutes ahead of them. In the far corner stood a rusted filing cabinet marked Archive B. He pulled the drawer open. Inside were folders labeled with codes. C07, D01, F03. But the slot for A02 was empty. Leah's voice cracked the silence. "They knew I took it." Merrick turned. "That means they're watching us. You need protection." She shook her head. "I need answers." Back at headquarters, the FBI was already looping into the case. Organized lending networks, laundering fronts, human trafficking angles. Too many possibilities, none certain. While Merrick coordinated the evidence transfer, Leah sat in a small observation room clutching her daughter's photograph. The fluorescent lights hummed above her, merciless and white. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered before thinking. A man's voice, smooth, unhurried. "Mrs. Harding, we have something that belongs to you, but you have something that belongs to us." Her blood turned to ice. "Where is she?" "Safe," the man said. "For now. You shouldn't have gone to the warehouse." Mr. Harding made promises he couldn't keep. Leah's throat tightened. "What do you want?" "Closure," he said simply. "Just like you." The line went dead. Moments later, Merrick entered. She handed him the phone, words trembling out between breaths. "They called me." He checked the screen. No traceable ID, no callback number. "They're spooked," he said. "That might make them careless." Leah looked up. "Or desperate." That afternoon, Merrick met her in the hallway with new orders. "We're going back to Mountain View. Ryan's being moved to secure custody for questioning." Leah stared. "You think he's part of it?" "I think he knows more than he remembers. If his story about the crash being staged is true, he's our only live thread to whoever these people are." He glanced at her photo again. "And he's running out of time to tell us." They drove in silence toward the facility. Snowmelt ran down the gutters in clear, twisting lines, as if the city itself were trying to wash the story clean. Mountain View smelled of sterilizer and winter air trapped in vents. Security had doubled since the night Leah and Merrick last stood in its halls. 2 officers waited outside room 214, their expressions blank, hands near holsters. Inside, the lights were low. Ryan lay half-reclined on his bed, sensors taped to his temples, a monitor pulsing a slow green rhythm behind him. A neurologist in a pale coat turned as Merrick entered. "Detective Merrick?" "Dr. Herschel," the man said, offering a professional nod. "Mr. Harding's vitals are stable. We're beginning cognitive mapping to confirm the extent of retrograde loss." Merrick's tone stayed polite but tight. "We're not here for another report. We're here for truth." Every time we talk to him, he remembers just enough to protect himself. Dr. Herschel frowned. "Head trauma doesn't follow courtroom logic. There's measurable damage to the hippocampus. He's not faking that." Leah stood at the doorway, arms folded. "Then explain the voicemail he left the night before the crash. Explain the warehouse. Explain the phone call I just got." The doctor's eyes softened, the way professionals look at patients' families when science meets emotion. "Mrs. Harding, trauma can create islands of memory. He might retrieve fragments under stress, but that doesn't mean intent." "Stress," she echoed quietly. "Good. Then maybe we should give him some." They moved Ryan to a small therapy room. No cuffs, but the guards remained outside the glass. Leah sat opposite him. Merrick stayed beside the camera. Ryan blinked as if adjusting to the light. "Why am I here again?" "Because your story doesn't fit anymore," Merrick said. "We found your daughter's backpack under your old floor. You remember building that compartment?" Ryan's eyes flickered sideways. Maybe isn't enough," Leah said. "You remembered the cash, the lockbox, the people you owed. Start there." He rubbed the edge of the blanket, a nervous habit she hadn't seen in years. "They said no one would get hurt if I delivered. I was late. Then they called, said they had her. I thought if I disappeared, they'd let her go." "Disappear how?" Merrick asked. "The crash." "So the amnesia?" Ryan looked up, pupils narrowing. "That part's real. I remember headlights, a bend in the road, then noise. I woke up in the hospital. After that, nothing." Leah leaned forward. "You lied to me for a year about everything else. Why should I believe that?" Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because the last thing I heard before the crash was her screaming my name." The room fell silent. Even the monitor seemed to hesitate between beeps. Dr. Herschel entered with a small tray of objects. Photos, scents, textures. "We use stimuli to map neurological response," he explained. "Might trigger recall." He placed several items on the table. A plastic butterfly clip, a child's crayon drawing, a vial labeled vanilla extract. Leah recognized the butterfly immediately. "That's from her backpack." Ryan stared at it, blinking fast. His breathing quickened. "She loved that one," he murmured. "Said it made her feel brave." "What else, Ryan?" Merrick pressed gently. He shook his head violently. "They said not to talk." "Who?" "They'd hear me." Dr. Herschel watched the monitors, spikes of activity flaring across the EEG. "Something's surfacing. Keep him talking." Leah pushed the drawing closer. "This, Ryan. You remember this?" He stared. The crayon lines, pink wings, a yellow sun. A single tear slipped down his cheek. "She gave it to me at pickup. I told her we'd go for ice cream." His voice fractured. "We never made it." "After the ice cream promise," Merrick said softly. "You drove where?" Ryan opened his mouth, closed it again. His fingers twitched against the blanket, tracing invisible circles. Then a phrase escaped, barely audible. "Not home." "The man with the red truck." Leah's heart lurched. "What man?" Ryan's eyes unfocused. "He waited near the school. Said he could fix it all." The EEG alarmed sharp spikes, rapid beeps. Dr. Herschel stepped forward. "That's enough. His pulse. Let him finish." Leah snapped. Ryan gasped, grabbing his chest. He said, "She'd be safe once they got." The monitor screamed a warning tone. Nurses rushed in. Merrick pulled Leah aside as the team worked to stabilize Ryan. "We've got our first new lead in a year," he whispered. "Red truck. Maybe a handler. Maybe a collector." Leah stared through the glass at her husband's convulsing body. "Then find him before they move her again." An hour later, Ryan slept under sedation. Dr. Herschel met them in the corridor. "He's physically stable, mentally fragile. The amnesia's partial. He remembers pieces, but his mind built walls around the rest. Force them too quickly, and he might shatter." Merrick's reply was flat. "He's not the only one running out of time." Leah leaned against the window, watching the snow begin to fall again outside. For the first time in a year, she felt the story shifting, gears unlocking inside the dark machinery of the truth. Somewhere out there was a man with a red truck, and wherever he was, he had her daughter's name. By the next morning, the sky hung gray over Denver like a lid. The snow had turned to slush, streaking the hospital windows. Leah stood in the hallway with a paper cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Inside room 214, Ryan slept under sedation. The air monitors hummed softly, counting breaths, counting silence. Merrick arrived with another man in a dark peacoat, carrying a thin case. "Dr. Elliot Carter," Merrick introduced, "forensic neurologist from Quantico. He consults when memory loss meets criminal intent." Carter nodded, calm and precise. "Detective tells me your husband's retrograde amnesia has inconsistencies. I'd like permission to conduct an evoked memory assessment, sound, scent, microcurrent stimulation. It's non-invasive." Leah's voice was steady but hollow. "If it gets me my daughter, do it." Inside, Carter began attaching small adhesive sensors to Ryan's temples and wrists. "Sometimes," he explained, "memory suppression is organic trauma swelling. Sometimes it's chemical." Leah frowned. "Chemical?" "Certain dissociative compounds can mimic amnesia for months, used by interrogation units, and occasionally by people who want deniability." Merrick's pen paused. "You think someone drugged him?" "I think we'll know in a minute," Carter said. He turned a dial. A soft rhythmic pulse filled the room. Ryan twitched, eyelids fluttering. "Ryan," Carter said evenly, "you're driving. The road curves left. Who's in the car with you?" Ryan's lips moved. "Anukika." "Good. You stop near the school. What happens next?" "Red truck," he murmured. "Man says, follow me. Safe place." Carter adjusted the current. "Describe him." Ryan's breathing quickened. "Tattoo on his hand. A circle with a line through it." Leah's eyes widened. "A circle and line, like a division sign?" Ryan nodded weakly, said, "She'd be collateral until I paid." The monitors spiked again. Carter lifted his hand. "That's enough." Merrick leaned close. "You just confirmed abduction. We can work from that mark." Carter removed the electrodes, noting the data. "He's remembering fragments under stimulation, which means the block isn't total. Something chemical or hypnotic was layered on top of trauma." Leah swallowed hard. "Can you undo it?" Carter met her gaze. "Carefully. Too much and he could seize or relapse. But if we pace it, he may recall where the exchange happened." In the briefing room later, Merrick pinned a printed sketch to the board. A rough circle with a horizontal slash. "Tattoo described by Ryan Harding," he said. "Database crossmatch. Symbols used by an outfit called Division 14. Private collectors turned dead enforcers. Operate out of Utah, New Mexico, Colorado corridor. Half legal, half ghost." Leah whispered. "They called her Asset 02. Merrick nodded grimly. "That fits their catalog system. People and property both get numeric tags." Carter looked up from his notes. "If they drugged him, they have medical access. Someone supplied the compounds." Merrick circled the map with a marker. "Then we find whoever buys from Division 14. Logistics, clinics, pharmacies. Every trace of that symbol." Leah studied the board, the circle mark staring back like an open eye. "This isn't just about debt," she said quietly. They trade lives. That night Carter conducted a second microsession. Ryan was calmer, his pulse steady. When the current hummed, his voice drifted into the past again. They took her, said she'd stay at the ranch until I made it right. Miles from here, dry air, canyons. Colorado Springs? Merrick prompted. Ryan's eyelids flickered. Further. Signs in Spanish, white fences, horses. Leah clutched the edge of the chair. What else, Ryan? He gasped. She cried for me. They said she'd stop once she forgot my face. The monitor screamed. Carter cut the current immediately. Ryan sagged back, unconscious. Leah's tears came hot and silent. He's killing himself remembering. Carter gathered his cables. Then we stop here for tonight. But now we know rural compound, horses, desert air, Spanish signage. We can cross-reference Division 14's real estate fronts. Merrick scribbled coordinates. That narrows it to the southern counties. I'll get warrants moving. Outside, the sky deepened into indigo. Snowmelt ran in shining rivers down the street. Leah stood at the hospital exit, clutching her daughter's photo. If they think she's collateral, they'll move her when they feel pressure. Merrick zipped his coat. Then we make them feel it tonight. Carter added quietly. If we recover her, Mrs. Harding, you must be ready. A year is a long time for any child. Leah's voice trembled but held. Whatever she remembers, she'll know I never stopped. The hospital felt unnaturally still that night. Snow pressed against the windows like a quiet audience. Most of the staff had gone home. Only a skeleton crew remained. Dr. Carter stood beside Ryan's bed, adjusting the electrodes one last time. Merrick leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his jaw tense. Leah sat in the chair nearest Ryan, clutching her daughter's photo between her fingers. This will be brief, Carter said. 15 seconds of low current, no higher. I'll use scent association this time. It's safer. He held up a small vial of vanilla extract, the same scent from Enukika's lunchbox. Scent bypasses trauma barriers. Defines what logic can't. He flicked the switch. The faint hum returned. Ryan's breathing deepened, his fingers twitching once, twice. Ryan, Carter said softly. You're back in the car. Enukika's beside you. You've stopped. Tell me where. Ryan's lips trembled. Dust Road. Sun in my eyes, Barnes. Signs? Merrick asked. Wooden arch. Letters burned into it. What letters, Ryan? Ryan's head tilted slightly. C-R. He grimaced, pain slicing through the word. Carmine. Leah leaned forward, heart pounding. Carmine what? Carmine Ranch. Ryan's voice cracked. Carmine Ridge Old Horse Ranch. They kept her there. Told me never to come back. The monitor's pulse quickened, but Carter didn't stop. Who was there with you? The man with the tattoo. And a woman. She gave the shot. Smelled like alcohol. Leah's grip tightened on the photo. A nurse. Ryan nodded weakly. Said it would help me forget. Did it? Merrick asked quietly. Ryan's eyelids fluttered. Until now. Carter switched off the current. The hum died. For a moment no one moved. Then Ryan's voice, faint but clear. She's alive. I heard her. They sing to her at night. Leah's tears broke free before she could stop them. Ryan slept again, but his pulse steadied. The air in the room felt charged, like the seconds after lightning. Carter looked at Merrick. You have a location. Carmine Ridge. It's in Mesa County, southwest Colorado. Abandoned horse ranch, decommissioned 12 years ago. Merrick pulled out his phone. I'll get a team moving. We do this fast and quiet. Leah stood, the photograph trembling in her hands. I'm going. No, Merrick said automatically. You can't stop me, she replied, voice low but unshakable. You wouldn't even be here if I hadn't gone after them first. He met her eyes, saw the steel there, and finally nodded. Then stay close. You move when I say move. By dawn, they were on the highway again. Merrick, 2 state officers, Dr. Carter riding in the back seat with his medical case, and Leah in the passenger seat, wrapped in a borrowed jacket. The mountains rose ahead, white peaks cutting into gray clouds. Leah watched the miles tick by. Her thoughts spiraled between hope and terror. What if Ryan's memory was false, an invention of a broken mind? But deep inside she knew that name hadn't come from nowhere. Merrick's voice broke the silence. Carmine Ridge shows up in old state property files. Foreclosed, bought by a shell company in 2019, same quarter Genco asset recovery rebranded. It's them. Leah's hands clenched on her knees. Then we're already late. Carter looked up from his notes. Division 14 uses ranches as holding grounds. Wide land, no neighbors. Perfect for debt collateral. The phrase hit Leah like ice. Debt collateral, she repeated bitterly. That's what my daughter became. No one answered. The only sound was the low hum of tires against the wet road. They reached Mesa County by late afternoon. Rain replaced snow. The air smelled of iron and pine. At the edge of a ravine, a dirt road branched toward a cluster of decaying barns beneath a faded wooden arch. Carmine Ridge Horse Ranch. Merrick cut the engine. This is it. Leah stared through the windshield, her heart slamming against her ribs. She's in there. Carter placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's bring her home. Merrick signaled to the officers. No sirens, no noise. We move in twos. As they stepped out, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the valley. Low, distant, inevitable. Leah looked up once more at the archway, its letters black against the storm. For the first time in a year, the air smelled like possibility instead of grief. The storm rolled in just as Merrick's convoy reached the ridge. Lightning flashed once, carving the skeletal outline of the old horse ranch against the darkening sky. The wooden arch that read Carmine Ridge creaked in the wind like an ancient warning. Merrick raised a hand, signaling silence. The three vehicles behind them shut off their lights one by one until the world turned black, save for the faint glow of the storm on the horizon. Leah crouched behind the SUV's door, rain soaking her hair, her heart pounding loud enough she was sure they could all hear it. She could smell the earth, wet, metallic, and familiar. For the first time since the crash, she wasn't thinking about grief or guilt. She was thinking about direction. Forward. Dr. Carter crouched beside her, whispering, "Thermal drones show minimal heat signatures. Could mean they're gone. Could mean they're waiting." Merrick scanned the ridge through binoculars. 2 barns, 1 main house. West Barn's power line is active. Someone's inside. A flash of lightning illuminated the slope. Rusted fencing, a collapsed water tower, and a faint trail of footprints leading from the main road toward the barn. Leah's fingers trembled as she adjusted her hood. Those could be fresh. They are, Merrick said. They cut through the mud less than an hour ago. They moved in pairs, sound swallowed by the wind. Merrick led with his weapon drawn, Leah and Carter following a few steps behind. The mud sucked at their boots. The rain turned every breath into mist. The west barn loomed ahead, its door chained but not locked. Merrick motioned for one of the officers to cut it quietly. The bolt gave way with a soft metallic sigh. Inside, the darkness was complete. The smell hit first, ammonia, hay, and something sharper. When Carter flicked his flashlight on, the beam caught the outlines of stalls and rusted cages. Leah's stomach twisted. This isn't a ranch anymore. The light swept across the far wall. Rows of numbered tags hung from nails. A01, A02, A03. Underneath each, a photograph. Children, women, men, some crossed out, some missing. Leah stepped closer, her breath catching when she saw 02. The photo was gone, but the tag remained. Below it, a piece of fabric was pinned, pink, patterned with faint white hearts. Her voice broke. That's from her backpack. Carter knelt beside it, inspecting the thread. It's recent. Fabric hasn't weathered yet. Merrick's voice came low and steady. They kept her here. Maybe moved her again. Leah turned, tears and rain indistinguishable. Then we find where. Carter moved toward a table lined with old monitors and an outdated desktop computer humming faintly under a tarp. He pulled it free and powered the screen. The flicker of blue light revealed a directory titled Asset Logs. "Hard drive still active," he said. "These are surveillance files." Merrick leaned over. "Open the latest." A grainy video loaded, timestamp March 6, 2023. The camera showed a concrete room, dimly lit. A small bed. A girl sitting cross-legged, holding a stuffed rabbit. Even through static, Leah recognized the curve of her daughter's shoulders. Her breath caught like a sob strangled in her chest. "She's alive," she whispered. "That's her." Carter checked the data overlay. File metadata shows transfer destination. External drive. ID ending in G14. Merrick's tone hardened. G14. Division 14. Lightning flared again outside, thunder shaking the walls. One of the officers at the doorway muttered, "Detective, we've got headlights, East Road." Merrick's jaw set. "We're not alone." A voice crackled over the old intercom system, distorted and cold. "You shouldn't have come here, Detective." Merrick spun toward the speaker, gun raised. "Who is this?" "You already know. You just don't know how deep it goes." Leah's pulse hammered. "Where's my daughter?" The voice chuckled, soft, menacing. "Closer than you think. But you won't make it off this ridge with her." The speaker popped, then went silent. Merrick barked to his team. "Positions. Everyone cover the perimeter." "Leah, Carter, stay low." Outside, engines roared to life. Headlights flared through the storm, cutting white veins across the darkness. Carter pulled Leah toward the corner of the barn. "They're here for cleanup." She clutched the pink fabric to her chest, her voice trembling but fierce. "Then they're not leaving without me." Rain lashed the tin roof, each drop like a hammer strike. The old barn shuddered under the wind. In the flickering light from the computer, Leah saw something she'd missed before. A square outline in the floor, half hidden under a feed trough. "Merrick!" she shouted over the noise. He rushed over, eyes following her finger. The outline wasn't just dirt variation, it was a hatch. Carter knelt, sweeping mud away until a rusted handle appeared. "This goes below ground." Merrick motioned to the officers. "Cover the doors. If they breach, hold them off." He grabbed the handle, braced, and pulled. The hatch resisted, then gave with a metallic shriek that vanished into the thunder. A stairway dropped into blackness. A stale gust of air drifted up, cold, chemical, wrong. Leah's flashlight beam pierced the dark, revealing cement walls slick with condensation. "What is this place?" Carter adjusted his glasses. "Not a storage cellar. Look at the walls, insulated. This was meant to contain." Merrick descended first, pistol raised. Leah followed, heart in her throat. Every creak of wood above could have been the enemy, every echo their last sound. At the bottom of the stairs stretched a narrow corridor lit by emergency bulbs that still glowed faintly red. Metal doors lined both sides, 6 in total, each labeled in fading paint. A01 through A06. Leah's breath caught when she reached A02. The door was ajar. She pushed it open. Inside sat a small cot, a plastic chair, and a child's shoe lying on its side. Pink, size 3, the cartoon butterfly still visible on the strap. Leah sank to her knees, trembling fingers tracing the dust. "This is hers. She was here." Merrick's voice came from behind her, low and careful. "There's food wrappers recent. Within a week, maybe less." Carter examined the shoe. Dry mold along the sole. This room hasn't flooded. She might have been moved upstairs when the storms hit. Leah's voice was barely audible. "Then she's still somewhere close." Merrick glanced toward the corridor's end, where another door, unlabeled, reinforced, waited in shadow. Or they kept something else here. He forced the latch. The heavy door opened onto a concrete chamber filled with filing cabinets and broken monitors. A generator ticked softly in one corner. Carter brushed dust off a label. Division 14, Asset Catalog, active. He opened a drawer. Inside were sealed envelopes marked with numbers. each containing a photo, medical form, and barcode. Merrick's stomach turned. They documented everyone. Leah rifled through the stack until she found one stamped as 02. Inside was a folder thinner than the rest, half the pages missing. But one form remained. Status: transferred to Facility B, Carmine Ridge / secondary unit date, March 17, 2023, next shipment. Pending. Carter scanned the margin. Facility B could mean another structure on site. Maybe underground link. Merrick checked the blueprints pinned to the wall, faded ranch schematics. There's a drainage tunnel leading to the east paddock. If they moved her, that's where. Leah stood, fists clenched. Then we go now. Before Merrick could reply, radio static burst from the officer upstairs. Detective. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Black SUVs. North Trail. Merrick's face hardened. Division 14 cleanup crew. He slammed the drawer shut. Grab what you can. We're out of time. They sprinted down the corridor to a second hatch at the far end. Carter yanked it open, revealing a sloping passage barely tall enough to crawl through. The air smelled of iron and water. Goes east, Merrick said. Toward that paddock. Leah crawled first, the pink shoe gripped in her hand. Mud smeared her coat, cold water soaking her sleeves. The passage curved, then widened into a brick chamber where stormwater trickled through cracks. At the far wall stood a metal grate bolted shut. Behind it, faint yellow light pulsed, like a lantern swaying. Leah whispered, "Someone's there." Merrick crouched beside her, listening. Beneath the storm's muffled growl came a thin sound, music. A voice humming. A lullaby. Leah's heart seized. Anukika's bedtime song. Carter shone his flashlight through the grate. The beam caught movement, small hands pale against the light. Merrick's whisper was a command and a promise. We found her. Merrick didn't hesitate. He drew his sidearm and handed Leah his flashlight. Keep the beam low. When I say move, you crawl through and grab her. Don't look back. Leah's pulse was a hammer in her chest. Through the grate, she could see a tiny silhouette trembling in the dim yellow glow. A small voice whispered a tune only a mother would know. Carter crouched beside Merrick. 2 bolts on the grate, corroded. I can break them quietly. Do it, Merrick said. Carter slipped a screwdriver from his pocket, working fast, metal scraping metal. Above them, thunder cracked, masking the noise perfectly. Then pop. The grate came loose. Now, Merrick whispered. Leah crawled through first. The tunnel's chill bit through her sleeves. On the other side was a small chamber carved from stone, a single lantern hanging from a hook. And there, kneeling on the floor, clutching a stuffed rabbit, was Anukika. Mommy? The little girl whispered. Leah froze, her throat locked, tears spilling as she reached out trembling hands. It's me, baby. It's really me. Anukika dropped the toy and ran straight into her arms. Leah buried her face in her daughter's hair, breathing in the faint scent of soap and dust. You're safe now. I've got you. Behind them, Carter's voice cut through. We need to move. They're here. Boots thudded on the floor above, heavy, organized. The echo rolled through the walls. Merrick pressed his ear to the tunnel wall. 3, maybe 4 men. They'll sweep down here next. He turned to Leah. Take her through the tunnel back to the vehicles. Carter will lead you. No, Leah whispered. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice, Merrick said. You already did your part. Now let me finish mine. He moved back toward the stairway, signaling the officers over his radio. Team 2, converge East Tunnel. Hostiles inbound. Carter grabbed Leah's shoulder. Come on. She clutched her daughter and followed him through the drainage passage, the stuffed rabbit bouncing from Anukika's hand. Behind them, gunfire cracked, short bursts swallowed by thunder. The flash of lightning through the cracks painted the walls white. Leah glanced back once and saw Merrick's silhouette framed in the stairwell, firing into the dark. Then the passage shook. An explosion above sent dust cascading from the ceiling. Move! Carter yelled. The tunnel widened into an outlet under the paddock fence. Rainwater gushed through, icy and strong. Carter forced the metal grate outward and shoved Leah and Anukika through first. They tumbled into mud and rain, gasping. Behind them, more shots echoed, closer now. Carter crawled out last, slamming the grate back into place just as headlights flared through the sheets of rain. 3 black SUVs screeching to a stop outside the barn. Men in dark jackets fanned out with rifles. Their faces were hard, mechanical, unrecognizable. "Run!" Carter hissed. They sprinted through the field, mud splashing up their legs. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the old wooden arch like a grave marker. A bullet tore into the dirt near Leah's foot. Another whizzed past Carter's shoulder. He spun, firing twice, not to kill but to buy seconds. Leah gripped her daughter tighter and didn't look back. At the ridgeline, Merrick's backup vehicle screeched around the bend. 2 officers inside waving frantically. "Go, go, go!" one shouted as the doors flew open. Carter shoved Leah and Anukika inside, then climbed in behind them. The SUV roared forward, fishtailing on the slick dirt road. Through the rear window, flames began to rise from the barn. The Division 14 men were torching the evidence. Merrick's voice crackled over the radio. "I'm out. Repeat. I'm clear. Coming down the South Trail." Leah's heart leapt. He was alive. But another voice, cold, calm, cut through the static. "Detective Merrick, this is your last warning. You're interfering with private business." Carter's eyes widened. "They've hacked the frequency." Merrick's reply came firm and steady. "Business is over." A burst of gunfire echoed in the distance, then silence. Leah's fingers dug into the seat, trembling. "Please, no." Carter's hand found hers. He knew what he was walking into. He wanted you clear. Behind them, the ridge burned, orange and furious against the storm. They reached the highway as dawn bled pale blue into the clouds. Rain still fell, lighter now, almost tender. Leah held her daughter close, whispering through tears. "You're safe. You're safe." Anukika stirred, eyes half closed. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" Leah's breath hitched. She didn't know what to say. Carter spoke softly from the front seat. "He's resting, sweetheart. He helped us find you." The little girl smiled faintly, clutching the stuffed rabbit tighter. "He said you'd come." Leah's tears fell freely now. He was right. The rain had stopped by the time they reached Denver. Gray clouds hung low over the city, the kind that never quite decide whether to weep or heal. The convoy pulled into the precinct parking lot just as dawn broke over the mountains. Leah stepped out first, barefoot now, clothes soaked and torn, still clutching Anukika close. Her daughter's small fingers gripped her collar as though letting go would make the world collapse again. Dr. Carter met them at the curb, exhaustion etched into his face but relief softening his voice. "She's stable. No fractures, no visible injuries. Just undernourished and frightened." Leah's lips trembled. "She hasn't said a word since we left." "She will," he said gently. "Give her time." Carter turned to the agents unloading files and evidence boxes from the vehicles. "Get the footage backed up, every tag photographed. Division 14's operation ends today." Leah barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, the direction of Carmine Ridge. "What about Merrick?" Carter's silence was answer enough. Hours passed in fragments, questions, statements, flashes of light as cameras photographed her daughter for documentation. Leah answered what she could, ignored what she couldn't. By afternoon, the news broke. Federal agents dismantle private debt network. Carmine Ridge fire reveals human trafficking ring. Merrick's name wasn't mentioned. His heroism was buried beneath the bureaucracy of ongoing investigation. Leah sat in a small waiting room at St. Luke's Hospital while doctors examined Anukika. The hum of vending machines filled the air. A nurse passed, whispering something about sedation, nightmares, therapy. Leah nodded through it all. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Every nerve in her body stiffened. She answered. A familiar voice rasped through static. "He made it out." Her knees gave way. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter. Merrick's alive. Burned bad, but alive. He said to tell you." She sings louder than the storm. The line went dead. Leah pressed the phone to her chest, tears spilling down. That phrase, his way of saying hope, survived. That evening, a nurse guided Leah down the hallway to the pediatric wing. The door creaked open to a small room filled with soft lamplight and the smell of disinfectant. Anukika sat up in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes still wary but brighter. She looked up as Leah entered. "Mommy," she said quietly. Leah froze. It was the first time she'd heard her daughter's voice since the rescue. "I had a dream," the little girl whispered. "You were calling me, but I couldn't find you. Then Daddy came and said you'd never stop looking." Leah knelt by the bed, holding her daughter's hand against her heart. "He was right, baby. I never did." Anukika smiled faintly, eyes closing as sleep reclaimed her. Leah sat there long after, stroking her hair, until the machine's soft beeps became a lullaby of their own. 2 weeks later, Carter met Leah in Merrick's hospital room. The detective was pale but conscious, his right arm bandaged, eyes still sharp. "Thought you'd vanish after all that," he said with a weak smile. "Not without saying thank you," Leah replied. Carter placed a folder on the table. Division 14's digital core. Every client, every transaction, every name. The operation's gone. Leah glanced at the folder but didn't open it. "I don't care about them anymore." Merrick nodded. "Good. Let the system handle what's left." She hesitated, then asked, "What happens to Ryan?" Carter's tone softened. "He's in a federal facility. Still unstable, but..." He asked if she was safe. That's all he wanted to know. Leah closed her eyes. "Tell him she sings louder than the storm." Spring came slow that year. The snow melted into the river, carrying with it the ashes of Carmine Ridge. Leah and Anukika moved into a small apartment near the city's edge. There were nights when the little girl still woke crying, but Leah would hold her close, humming the same lullaby that once echoed in the dark. Sometimes, when the rain began to fall, Anukika would look out the window and whisper, "Mommy, the storm's singing again," and Leah would smile through tears. "Yes, baby, that means we made it home." The camera would fade, the music soft, the narrator's voice quiet but resolute. Some storms don't come to destroy, they come to reveal what refuses to be lost. And sometimes, the loudest sound in the silence is love. The courthouse smelled of paper and rain. Reporters huddled outside the steps, microphones ready, their questions muffled beneath umbrellas. Inside, the hum of whispers filled the high-ceilinged hall like restless bees. At the center table sat Leah Harding, back straight, hands folded, face unreadable. Beside her was Dr. Carter, now an official forensic witness for the prosecution. Across the room, under guard, sat the remnants of Division 14, for men in suits that couldn't hide their decay. Their leader, a man named Elias Ramos, wore a bandage around his wrist where the tattoo had been cut away before capture. Merrick stood at the edge of the courtroom, alive but altered. Burns traced his neck and hand like lightning scars. He leaned on a cane now, his voice quieter, slower, but it still carried the weight of authority. "Court is now in session," the clerk announced. Judge Brennan entered, a woman with cold eyes and the kind of calm that only comes from decades of listening to horrors repeated as evidence. The prosecution began with facts. Carmine Ridge, converted into an off-grid trafficking facility under a front company, Genco Asset Recovery. Assets cataloged as numbers traded for debt settlements. Children, women, even elderly dependents tagged and held as leverage. When they called Leah to the stand, the courtroom seemed to exhale. Cameras clicked once, then stopped. Leah adjusted the microphone, voice steady but fragile at the edges. "They called my daughter Asset A02. I found her tag nailed to a barn wall. The fabric was from her backpack." The prosecutor nodded. "Mrs. Harding, can you tell the court what you discovered beneath that barn?" Leah hesitated, then forced herself to remember. Cells, small ones, with doors labeled A01 through A06. I found her shoe in A02. And in the next room, files, hundreds. each with names and faces. The prosecutor handed her a photograph of the pink shoe in an evidence bag. "Is this the item you recovered?" "Yes." "And your husband, Ryan Harding, what was his connection to these defendants?" Leah's throat tightened. "They owned his debt. He thought if he disappeared, they'd let her go. They didn't." A murmur rippled through the gallery. One of the defense attorneys rose. "Mrs. Harding, you're aware your husband's memory loss makes his account unreliable?" Leah turned, gaze sharp. "He remembers enough to hate himself, and enough to tell me where to find her." The judge tapped her gavel once. "Stick to the facts, counsel." When Ryan was escorted in, the room fell silent. He walked slowly, a thin man in a hospital suit, his eyes shadowed but clear for the first time in months. Dr. Carter stood near the witness stand, monitoring him closely. The prosecutor began gently. "Mr. Harding, do you remember the night of June 18th, 2022? Ryan's fingers trembled on the stand's edge. "I remember promising my daughter ice cream and headlights. After that, nothing until I heard her voice in a dream." The prosecutor placed a photograph in front of him, the mark of the Division 14 tattoo. "Do you recognize this symbol?" Ryan's jaw tightened. He had it on his hand. "The man who took her. Can you describe him?" Ryan looked up, eyes distant. Dead eyes, like he'd already buried himself. The defense rose immediately. "Your Honor, this witness's neurological state." Judge Brennan cut in, voice firm. "He's speaking clearly." Overruled. Ryan's gaze flicked toward Leah, then to the defendants. "They thought they owned her, but she wasn't theirs to take." His voice cracked. "She wasn't mine to lose either." The room stayed silent long after he stepped down. The trial lasted 9 days. Evidence stacked high, emails, financial records, recovered footage from the Carmine Ridge computer. When the jury returned, no one breathed. On the charges of human trafficking, unlawful imprisonment, and conspiracy to obstruct justice, guilty on all counts. Leah closed her eyes. The words didn't sound like victory. They sounded like exhale after a long drowning. Ramos turned once as he was led away, eyes meeting hers. "You only cut off one head," he said quietly. "There are others." Merrick stepped forward, his cane striking the floor once. "Then we'll find them." Ramos smiled, a ghost of confidence. "You won't even know where to look." The guards pushed him onward. The heavy doors closed. Outside, reporters shouted questions Leah didn't hear. All she could feel was her daughter's hand in hers. Warm, real, alive. 2 months after the trial, Denver was green again. Snowmelt had turned the hills into living color, and for the first time in a year Leah could breathe without tasting metal. But the silence at night was still wrong. Too large, too expectant. She and Anukika lived in a small apartment above a bakery that opened early and smelled of yeast and cinnamon. The scent helped her sleep. So did the sound of her daughter's breathing in the next room. Every morning they walked 3 blocks to a trauma recovery center. Inside, bright murals covered the walls. Handprints from children who had survived things no child should. A therapist named Dr. Dana Sloan met them with patient eyes and a softness that never felt pitying. Leah sat in the corner during the sessions, listening as Anukika colored and talked in fragments. "Bad men," she said once. "They said I was a number." "What did Mommy do when she found you?" Dana asked gently. Anukika smiled. "She sang louder than the storm." Leah bit her lip until she tasted blood. Later that day, Dana stopped her in the hallway. "She's remembering safely," the therapist said. "The drawings help her tell the story without reliving it, but she watches your face each time she speaks. Let her see that you can hear it without breaking." Leah nodded. "I'll try." Detective Merrick came back to the department in early July. The cane was gone. A limp remained. His voice was quieter now, his humor drier, but the precision in his eyes hadn't dulled. The first time Leah saw him again was outside the precinct, where he stood feeding crumbs to pigeons like an old man hiding in plain sight. "You disappeared after the verdict," he said, handing her a coffee. "I needed quiet." she replied. He smiled faintly. Quiet doesn't last. Not for people like us. She looked at his burned hand. You still working? Consulting. Federal Task Force cleanup. Division 14 had branches in 3 states. We found 2 more ranches, both empty. But someone funded them. Leah's stomach tightened. Ramos mentioned others. You think he was telling the truth? Merrick nodded. Always assume the serpent keeps its tail. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small flash drive. Carter decrypted one of their cloud backups. I thought you should see it before anyone else. Leah stared at it, the weight of unfinished stories returning to her chest. That night, after Anukika fell asleep, Leah plugged the drive into her laptop. A single folder appeared, Archive Project Mercy. Inside were hundreds of documents, contracts, names, photos, and a list titled Pending Transfers, a series. Her eyes scanned down the column. 03 cleared. 04 unknown. 05 active. At the bottom of the page was a location code she didn't recognize. NM Blaze Silo. She called Merrick immediately. New Mexico? He said after a pause. We've been chasing that code name for weeks. If this is legit, it's our first real lead. Leah hesitated. Don't keep me out of it this time. You've done enough, Leah. Not until every number becomes a name. He sighed. The sound of a man who knew he'd lost the argument before it began. Then pack light, he said. We leave at dawn. Before sunrise, Leah stood by the window watching the city wake. Anukika stirred in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Leah knelt beside her. I have to go for a few days, sweetheart. Dr. Sloan will stay with you. I promise I'll be back. The girl blinked sleepily. You're going to help the other numbers? Leah nodded, throat tight. Yes, the ones still waiting. Tell them the storm's gone, Anukika whispered. Leah kissed her forehead. I will. By noon, Merrick and Leah were on the highway again, the desert stretching endless and gold before them. Carter called from Quantico halfway through the drive. I ran the location code, he said over the speaker. It points to a decommissioned missile silo 30 miles outside Santa Fe. The company listed on the lease, Division 14 subsidiary, inactive on paper since 2017. Merrick tightened his grip on the wheel. Inactive never means empty. Leah stared out the window at the barren horizon. The clouds there looked like smoke. In her mind, she could still hear her daughter's voice. Tell them the storm's gone. She hoped it was true, but storms had memories, and some never learned to fade. The road to the silo wasn't on any map. A dirt track branched off from an abandoned stretch of highway, winding through low desert scrub and rust-colored rocks. By late afternoon, the sun hung heavy, spilling molten gold over the horizon. Leah and Merrick parked half a mile from the coordinates. The wind here was dry and sharp. It smelled of dust and metal. Ahead, a chain-link fence surrounded a half-buried dome of concrete, barely visible beneath decades of erosion. A single structure jutted from the sand. A watchtower, its windows boarded, its antenna snapped in two. Merrick raised his binoculars. No movement, no power lines either. Leah tightened her jacket. Dead doesn't mean empty. They moved low through the brush until the fence came into reach. Merrick cut a small section with a silent tool, motioned her through, and replaced it like they'd never been there. The silo door, a circular hatch the size of a swimming pool, sat half open, as if abandoned in the middle of an operation. The hydraulic pistons were streaked with rust. Beneath it, a narrow steel staircase spiraled into darkness. After you, Merrick said quietly, switching on a flashlight. Leah hesitated only a second. You first, detective. He smiled, one corner of his mouth lifting. Still don't trust anyone to lead. Not when the last people I followed buried children underground. The air grew colder as they went down. 10 meters, 20, 30, until their lights caught concrete walls lined with faded stencils. Project Mercy, property of government contractor Cipher Dynamics. The company name sent a chill through Merrick. They built containment facilities during the Gulf War. Biochemical labs, black budget projects. Division 14 must have bought their leftovers. The lower level opened into a control room. Rows of monitors sat covered in dust, keyboards rusted. But one corner glowed faintly, a single terminal still humming with auxiliary power. Leah approached, her reflection flickering in the cracked screen. Lines of text scrolled by automatically. Archive update, batch A06 transferred. Receiving location, Baltimore, Division 14/Horizon Chapter. Baltimore, Merrick whispered. There's another branch? Leah scrolled further. A list of subject IDs filled the screen, each one tagged with medical data and age. One stood out, a 05 status. Active transfer pending. She clicked the entry. A photo opened. A girl of about 9, thin, dark-haired, eyes hollow. The metadata timestamp was 6 days ago. Leah's breath caught. They're still moving kids. Not just kids, Merrick said, pointing to a subfolder labeled C-Series. Adults, test subjects, debtors, informants. He reached for his radio. Merrick to Carter, we found the New Mexico site live. Forwarding screenshots. But static filled the line. The deeper they went, the thicker the interference. Then a noise. Faint. Mechanical. Like air pumps starting far below. Leah turned her flashlight down the hall. Someone's here. They followed the sound through a tunnel lined with old cables and warning signs. Half the bulbs were still burning with emergency power, giving everything a sick orange glow. A door ahead bore a modern keypad, not rusted like the rest. Merrick crouched, scanning it with his phone. Updated system. Remote access. Someone's maintained this place recently. Can you open it? He smiled faintly. Since 1988, I've opened everything with the same code. Patience. He shorted the panel and the lock clicked open. Inside, refrigeration units hummed. Stainless steel drawers, each labeled with ID tags. Leah's stomach turned, but when she pulled one open, there were only hard drives, not bodies. Data archives. She lifted one. 05_video_logs. Merrick exhaled slowly. We've got proof. Suddenly, movement at the far end of the room, a figure in a maintenance suit. He froze as their lights hit him. Federal agents. Merrick shouted. Hands up. The man dropped a toolbox and bolted. Merrick chased, the limp barely slowing him. Leah followed, heart hammering. They caught him at a stairwell. Merrick pinned him against the wall. Who sent you? I just keep the power running, the man stammered. They told me to check in once a month. Please. Who's they? He hesitated. The Horizon Chapter. Baltimore. Leah felt her knees weaken. They're still organized. Merrick cuffed the man. Then we'll need more than a trial this time. Back in the control room, Leah slipped one of the recovered drives into the terminal. Video files blinked open. Footage from Carmine Ridge, from holding cells she recognized, and newer ones from facilities she'd never seen. A familiar voice narrated over the static. Project Mercy is not termination. It's transition. Those with insurmountable debt are reassigned where they can serve the network's future. Assets are never lost, only relocated. Merrick's face hardened. That's Ramos. But these timestamps, he recorded this after the verdict. He's alive, Leah whispered, and he's rebuilding. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert. The storm was coming fast. Merrick pocketed the drives. We're shutting this place down. I'll call in a federal sweep once we're topside. Leah stood staring at the last frame on the monitor, Ramos's face leaning close to the camera. Mercy isn't about saving, he said. It's about erasing. The screen went black. When they climbed back into the open air, night had fallen. A windstorm whipped sand across the plain. Their car waited like a dark scar on the horizon. As Merrick unlocked the doors, Leah's phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. We warned you. Mercy never ends. Horizon. She looked up at the stars hidden behind dust and cloud. For the first time since the trial, she didn't feel victory. only the weight of an unfinished story. Merrick saw her expression. "What is it?" "They know we're here." He started the engine. "Then we move faster." 3 days later, Washington, D.C. was gray under endless rain. The streets outside the federal building gleamed with reflections of traffic lights, and every raindrop seemed to echo the noise still trapped inside Leah's head. Those words, "Mercy never ends." Merrick walked beside her, his coat soaked, his expression carved in fatigue. In his hand was a secure case containing the drives they'd taken from the silo. They passed security, climbed 3 floors, and entered a small briefing room filled with FBI officials and Justice Department observers. At the far end stood Special Agent in Charge Valerie Nunez, the woman now leading the Multi-State Division 14 Task Force. She greeted Merrick with a tight nod. "You weren't authorized to enter that site." Merrick dropped the case on the table. "You're welcome." Valerie opened it. The drives blinked with faint green indicators. "What's this?" "Every file from Project Mercy," Merrick said. "Proof of continuation under Horizon Chapter. Evidence that Ramos didn't die, he relocated." Valerie's sharp features softened. "You're saying this operation is still active?" Leah stepped forward. "I'm saying it's growing. They've moved from debt collection to identity erasure. People vanish, and the system covers for them." The room fell quiet. Rain beat against the windows like a slow metronome. Valerie exhaled. "Then this case doesn't end here. We'll need testimony, media control, international warrants." Merrick interrupted, voice low. "You'll need to move fast. They already know we found them." Ryan Harding sat in a federal rehabilitation facility overlooking the Potomac. His hair had gone gray in patches, and the tremor in his hands made him seem older than he was. When Leah entered the room, he looked up slowly, cautious, uncertain. "You came," he said, voice rough. "I didn't come for forgiveness," she answered. "I came for truth." He gestured weakly toward the chair. "Then sit. It's all I've got left." She remained standing. "Ramos is alive. Division 14 still moves people like property. You knew more than you told us." Ryan rubbed his temples. "I thought I could fix it. They said if I paid the last debt, they'd release her. They lied. I tried to disappear before they did worse." "You almost succeeded," Leah said bitterly. "You disappeared from your own life." He swallowed hard. "I see her face every night. I remember now the drive, the storm, the man waiting by the highway. He told me to keep quiet or she'd vanish forever. I didn't think he meant literally." Leah looked at him for a long time, the anger draining into something more complex. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the exhaustion of finally understanding. "She's safe now," she said softly. "But there are others who aren't. You can still help by testifying." Ryan nodded slowly, eyes wet. "Then maybe that's how I stay her father." 2 weeks later, federal investigators staged a controlled leak. An anonymous video appeared on national news, footage from the silo, the Division 14 archives, the Project Mercy manifesto. The footage went viral within hours. Congressional hearings opened the next morning. Leah watched from her living room as the anchors spoke her daughter's name, the same way they once did in missing person alerts. Anukika sat beside her, sketching butterflies in a notebook. "Mama, are they talking about us again?" Leah smiled faintly. "About what happened, yes, but now they're listening." The camera on screen showed Merrick walking up the Capitol steps. Cane gone again, file in hand. He looked older but certain, like a man still fighting ghosts he could finally see. Late that night, when the house was quiet, Leah found an envelope under her door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, precise. "We respect what you did, but you only exposed 1 chapter. The book is still being written." No signature, only a symbol at the bottom, a stylized letter H, formed by 2 intersecting blades. Leah stared at it, the chill settling deeper than fear. She walked to her desk, opened her laptop, and inserted a blank flash drive. On the screen, she created a new folder, Horizon Files, continued. Then she began typing a report, Dates, locations, every detail she remembered. Not for the police. Not for the press. For herself. For truth's sake. Months later, a warm autumn wind swept through Colorado again. Leah stood outside the same kindergarten where it had all begun, watching her daughter run across the playground, free and laughing. The sunlight touched everything. The swings, the trees, the world she'd nearly lost. Merrick leaned on the fence beside her. "You ever going to stop chasing ghosts?" Leah smiled, eyes still on her daughter. "Only when they stop whispering," he chuckled. "Then I'll keep my phone on." They watched as Anukika stopped to help another child who'd fallen. Small, simple kindness in a world that had nearly erased it. For the first time in years, Leah allowed herself to breathe. The ghosts might never fade completely, but daylight had found them. And daylight, she thought, was louder than mercy. In a world where justice often arrives too late, one mother refused to let silence be the last word. For a year, Leah Harding searched not just for her daughter, but for the truth buried beneath polished lies and government paper trails. What began as a custody weekend became a descent into the underbelly of a system built to erase the helpless. And yet, through storms, fear, and betrayal, she proved something that echoes beyond this story. That sometimes, courage isn't about running into the fire. It's about refusing to leave until someone else is safe. Mercy may have tried to erase her, but she became the noise mercy could never silence. Tonight, the world sleeps safer. Not because evil disappeared, but because one woman dared to name it. This story isn't just about one mother or one child. It's about every missing name still waiting to be found, and the light that refuses to die, even underground. If stories like this move you, if you believe truth deserves a voice, make sure you subscribe to Storyline Chronicles and stay with us, because next time, the story that needs to be told might be closer than you think.